On today's episode, we install fender braces. As we wait for a couple parts that are on back order to come in on the interior, we are going to move forward with some suspension stuff, starting with frame braces. So I've wanted these for a while. The reason being is I've got quite a bit of cowl shake. It almost feels like your wheels out of balance, kind of like little jitters that come from the front of the car. I can actually, while I'm driving, look at my fender and kind of see vibrations happening from the front, and I've been kind of chasing this for a while. I've had it on both sets of wheels that I've had both sets of wheels balanced multiple times, and the problem still lingers. So this is in large part an effort to get rid of that. So if anyone else has had cowl shake or been able to get rid of it, comment below, let me know. I'm not going to be able to test it out, obviously, because we're not going to be driving the car anytime soon, but it is an issue that I'm trying to sort out. And then beyond that, in general, it's supposed to help with rigidity. These cars are fairly flexible, especially the NA in the early generations. Even with the 1.8, they added a lot of chassis rigidity to it, so this car is as flexible as they come. So we're trying to alleviate some of that issue. Once installed, I'll show you why I think the Paco Motorsports brace specifically is the best option out there for these fender braces. So let's do it. Yes. Time to see what is hidden beneath these 30-year-old fenders. Look at that dirt. Look at that dirt. Okay, not too bad. Dirty, yes, but rusty, no. Solid. Can't ask for much better than that. While this is exposed, I'm just going to hit this with some glass cleaner and just do a quick clean, get all this grub off from here, just so it's not sitting here just because. While we're in there, right? So after some deep cleaning, this is what we're looking at here. There are just some very slight little trace amounts of rust. And I mean, this is actually open metal. That's not ideal. But nothing that I would say is too concerning. It's so cold out here, I don't really want to hit this with paint right now, just because it's not really going to do much. But this is something that I could address when it's a little warmer out. Come down here, maybe knock some of this back. I mean, this is just exposed metal. I can't believe it. Now that we have the fender removed and the chassis of the car is fully exposed, we can finally start getting into the installation of this fender brace. So the first thing that I would recommend doing is just kind of sitting it up and seeing where it's going to sit. After getting kind of a rough idea of where it's going to be, the instructions say to start with the bolts that you're going to borrow for the door back here. Remove those and replace them with the hardware that they have. So we'll go ahead and start with these bolts. Now the brace is on and I can mock it up. I don't have to hold on to it, but I didn't tighten these bolts down. You want to be able to move this around a little bit because, as you're going to see, we've got some mocking up to do, especially up front here. The next set of bolts that I have to do are these down here. Again, these are borrowed. They're essentially blanks on here. I actually have to remove these that are in here, but we're not having to drill anything just yet, which is awesome. Next up is this anchor bolt. Now I think this was a really clever design that Paco did to this. So what this actually is, this goes through a hole that's in the frame of the car, and you slip this on the back side of that hole. So here's where the hole is, the nut goes through the hole, and this plate actually will tighten up against the back of the frame. And I thought this was such a great idea. The brace also has, I don't want to call it a spacer, but it has some thickness to it there as well. So you're really just sandwiching the plate up against the fender brace itself. So now we're coming to, in my opinion, the most critical part of everything, because we are drilling. I initially suspected that you would have to drill brand new holes, but we're actually, again, using pre-existing holes that are in the body. This first one here is actually a hole for your wiring harness, so you got to pop that out from the other side. And this front one is just a dead little hole. Now, they do need to be increased in size to 3/8, but they're there, and it really doesn't take much. It's just a quick shoot, open that hole up a little bit. My technique that's worked, I continue to leave this still loose. I still am not tightening it fully down until I drill these holes. This front one doesn't line up absolutely perfect. In fact, neither of them do, but I mean, it's really, really close. So let's open up the holes. Lastly, we've got 2 sets of this hardware to install. Basically bolt, 2 washers, a nut, and then an acorn nut for the back end. That is to protect your wiring harness from the bolt. We don't want, obviously, that to work its way through. I mean, they thought about everything for this kit. I am really impressed. So far, this has been more difficult taking the fender off than installing this brace. With these front bolts, I'm going to be using some Loctite as well. Just considering that it's a nut going into a bolt, I've had bad luck with these kind of things coming undone in the past, as opposed to just going into a threaded hole. So I'm going to use some Loctite as well. Not called for, but just a me thing. Brace is on. What I think is also interesting to note, I've kept all these bolts quite loose, and now there's very little play in the brace itself. even though a lot of these bolts are finger loose, like these ones. These were really early in the installation. They are finger loose. I mean, all of these pretty much are at this point. So now I'm just going to slowly go around and start tightening them, kind of like you would do like a star pattern on a set of wheels or something like that. But just slowly go around and start doing that. And then at the end, there are some torque settings for these bolts up here. But yeah, let me just go around and just slowly start tightening these bolts. Now that we have the brace installed, I wanted to quickly touch base on why I think these Paco Motorsport braces are the best out there currently. My background is not an engineer, unlike Stefan. I have sales engineer experience. So what does that mean? I know how to annoy engineers. That's really what that comes down to. First off, it's the largest. What do I mean by that? Obviously, bigger is better, right, Dylan? Well, not necessarily. But in this situation, from what I can tell from comparing photos of this to the other ones on the internet, this brace reaches farther forward than any of the other ones. Now, why is that important in this situation? Well, here is the front shock. And if we were to draw a line here, it's intersecting the brace about at this point. Now, from what I can tell, most of the other braces are reaching behind this. As you taper down, the weakest spot that I would assume is going to be right when this pinches down narrow. So we're trying to prevent that movement. We're trying to prevent any sort of flex happening here. And I think as this opens up, it's safe to say that the flex isn't happening out here. It's predominantly happening out here by that suspension. So I think this does the best job of reaching forward to grab the chassis of the car and prevent it from flexing out here. And then all the way back here, it just distributes that load over a wide area. Again, thinking of that bridge across. Now, obviously, there are other factors at play here. This is three-dimensional. This is not two-dimensional. So you have other lateral forces happening as well. You actually do on a bridge as well. They're just minor. But that's my theory and why I think these braces are the best. They're also, I believe, the newest version out there. They recently hit the market. And lastly, they're only 6 pounds. They look massive. I was expecting 10 plus pounds on these, but there's not. They're really light, surprisingly so for them being so large. So Paco Motorsports, I think you did a great job. I'm excited to see how they feel out on the road. Once I have some experience out on the road, I'll leave a pinned comment below. So if you're watching this, once this car is back outside and driving around, we'll see if I get rid of some of that cowl shake. So that brings us to the end of the episode and the completion of our first suspension mod. Next week, we're actually going to do another suspension mod. We're going to do some frame rails. Now, the reason that I'm doing this now is I didn't want to put the carpet back in and then have to peel it back to, get underneath there and drill up underneath the car and all that stuff. So that was the part that was on back order. But it's going to show up tomorrow. So if you're liking this series, make sure you're subscribed down below. That'll help ensure that you get to see all of our episodes. And as always, thanks for watching and stay tuned. Because karts don't have a suspension, so you actually are designing a chassis to absorb bumps. But in this situation, we are not. We want a stiff chassis. Stiff.